So this is Alice in Wonderland, Chapter 4. Okay, I already started my Chapter 4 reading journal page. So I put the title, and then it's called The Rabbit Sends in a Little Bill. I have no idea what this means, but I think we're going to see the rabbit again, the one who was in such a hurry earlier. It was the white rabbit, trotting slowly back again and looking anxiously about it as it went, as if it had lost something, and she heard it muttering to itself, "The Duchess! The Duchess! Oh, my dear paws! Oh, my fur and whiskers! She'll get me executed! As sure as ferrets are ferrets! Where can I have dropped them, I wonder?" Alice guessed in a moment that it was looking for the fan and the pair of white kid gloves, and she very good-naturedly began hunting about for them, but they were nowhere to be seen. Everything seemed to have changed since her swim in the pool. Everything seems to change constantly, from what I've noticed in this story. And the great hall, with the glass table and the little door, had vanished completely. And again, this very much reminds me of 2020 and the pandemic, where things are just always changing, and it's hard to keep track of things and what we see, and so I'm not surprised. Very soon the rabbit noticed Alice as she went hunting about, and called out to her in an angry tune, "Why, Mary Ann, what are you doing out here? Run home this moment and fetch me a pair of gloves and a fan. Quick, now!" And Alice was so frightened that she ran off at once in the direction it pointed to, without trying to explain the mistake it had made. "He took me for his housemaid," she said to herself as she ran. "How surprised he'll be when he finds out who I am. But I'd better take him his fan and gloves, that is if I can find them," she said. She said this as she came upon a neat little rabbit house, on the door of which was a bright brass plate with the name W. Rabbit engraved on it. She went in without knocking and hurried upstairs, in a great fear lest she should meet the real Mary Ann and be turned out of the house before she had found the fan and gloves. "How queer it seems," Alice said to herself, "to be going messages for a rabbit. I suppose Dinah will be sending me on messages next." And she began fancying that's the sort of thing that would happen. "Miss Alice, come here directly and get ready for your walk." "Coming in a minute, nurse, but I've got to see that the mouse doesn't get out." "Oh, I don't think," Alice went on, "that they'd let Dinah stop in the house if it began ordering people like that. I mean, that is kind of a funny thing to think about, isn't it? If our animals just started ordering us around, or giving us things to do." By this time, she had found her way into a tidy little room, with a table in the window, and on it, as she had hoped, a fan and 2 or 3 pairs of tiny white kid gloves. She took up the fan and the pair of gloves, and just as she was going to leave the room, when her eye fell upon a little bottle that stood near the looking-glass. So I just have to point out here, this where it says kid gloves, when we talk about, I'm going to make a note of that language. When we talk about using kid gloves, it means we're being very careful with something. I could say he handled the situation with kid gloves. Just he was careful in how he handled it. And I find it interesting that that's the phrase that's used to describe the rabbit's gloves. So maybe the rabbit's trying to be careful with what he's doing. I mean, he's obviously anxious because he's late, and now he's missing his items, one of which is kid gloves. So that's quite interesting. Okay, so then she stood near the looking-glass. There was no label at this time with the words "Drink Me," but nevertheless she uncorked it and put it to her lips. Never a good idea, but she's in a fairy tale, so "I know something interesting is sure to happen," she said to herself, "whenever I eat or drink anything, just so I'll see what this bottle does. I do hope it'll make me grow large again, for really I'm quite tired of being such a tiny little thing." It did so indeed, and much sooner than she had expected. Before she had drunk half the bottle, she found her head pressing against the ceiling, and she had to stoop to save her neck from being broken. She hastily put down the bottle, saying to herself, "That's quite enough. I hope I shan't grow any more. As it is, I can't get out the door. I do wish I hadn't drunk quite so much." So in this one, I might, do another table with a bottle that says, labeled "Drink Me." drink me on it. And then I might draw Alice really, like, big, because she's really got big. That's her dress. There. And then I might draw, like, I don't know, the house, just like this. Because she just grew into the house, basically. She can't even get out. Like, here's the door. I just made this up, by the way, so. And my drawing might change, you know, based on what kind of happens next. So, let's look. Alas, it was too late to wish that, and that being that she hadn't quite drunk quite so much. She went on growing and growing, and very soon had to kneel down on the floor. In another minute there was not even room for this, and she tried the effect of laying down with one elbow against the door and the other arm curled around her head. Still, she went on growing and growing. As a last resort, she put one arm out the window and one foot up the chimney, and she said to herself, "Now I can do no more. Whatever happens, what will become of me?" Luckily for Alice, the magic bottle had now had its full effect, and she grew no larger. Still, it was very uncomfortable. And, as there seemed to be no sort of chance of her ever getting out of the room again, she felt unhappy. Let me draw a chimney here, because even though I can't really draw it very well, this is where Alice's foot. She said she put her foot out the chimney. So that's a funny vision. And her arm out the window, they say. Okay, draw that, and then here comes Alice. Her elbow out the window. Okay, there we go. So that's my drawing. I'm sure that most people can do much better. Alright. It was much pleasanter at home, thought poor Alice, when one wasn't always growing larger and smaller and being ordered about by mice and rabbits. I almost wish I hadn't gone down that rabbit hole. Now look, there's the expression again. And I want to read this again more carefully. I almost wish I hadn't gone down that rabbit hole. Alright, let's write that. I almost wish I hadn't gone down that rabbit hole. Remember, I told you, go down the rabbit hole means you go someplace where you don't really expect. Right? It might be because you're asking questions about something, you're investigating something, you're looking into something, or you have the control over that. Or in this case, Alice didn't have control. She sort of fell down the rabbit hole, sort of fell into a place she didn't expect. That's kind of what happened with 2020, right? The pandemic started, and we just have kind of gone down this rabbit hole. I see it this way. And, well, sometimes we wish we hadn't really gone down the rabbit hole that way, but we wouldn't know that we would wish that if we didn't go down the rabbit hole. So it's kind of a catch-22. You know, it means that either way, if we don't go down the rabbit hole, we don't know. If we go down the rabbit hole, we don't want it. It's kind of like a no-win, you know? That's not even to say that it's bad. It's just unexpected, I would say. So, Alice said, where did we find it? Right here. I almost wish I hadn't gone down that rabbit hole, and yet, it's rather curious, you know, this sort of life. So, she's fascinated, even though she's not sure if she should really be there or not. She's fascinated by it. I do wonder what can have happened to me. When I used to read fairy tales, I fancied that kind of thing never happened. Now, here I am in the middle of one. This is 2020 totally, right here. I fancied that kind of thing never happened, and now here I am in the middle of one. There ought to be a book written about me. That there ought. And guess what? There is. The irony that the author would write this, Lewis Carroll would write this in the book, is very funny. Because that's Alice's perception. She thinks what's happening to her is so out of the ordinary, it should be in a book. And I think she's right. And look, Lewis Carroll thought she's right too, so he put her in a book. And I bet we're going to see lots of books come out about people's experiences during the pandemic, at least writings, because they're so different than what we would expect. Anything that takes us down the rabbit hole, probably worth writing about. I'll say that again, but Anything that takes us down the rabbit hole is probably worth writing about. And when I grow up, I'll write one. But I'm grown up now, she added in a sorrowful tone. At least there's no room to grow up anymore. She's big, but she's not really grown up. So she's just saying she's grown up. But a lot of kids want to be grown up, or say they're grown up. Now in this case, she really got big, right? But she didn't actually become grown up. But then, thought Alice, I shall never get any older than I am. Shall I never get any older than I am now? That'll be a comfort. One way, never to be an old woman, but then always to have lessons to learn. Oh, I shouldn't like that. Oh, you foolish Alice, she answered herself. How can you learn lessons in here? Why, there is hardly room for you, and no room at all for any lesson books. And so she went on, taking first one side and then the other, and making quite a conversation of it altogether. But after a few minutes, she heard a voice outside and stopped to listen. Marianne? Marianne, said the voice, fetch me my gloves this moment. Then came a pattering of little feet on the stairs. Alice knew it was the rabbit coming back to look for her, and she trembled till she shook the house, quite forgetting that she was now about 1,000 times as large as the rabbit, and had no reason to be afraid of it.